Let's resume our technical session. We have Dr. M.H. Ilyas, Professor, School of Gandhian Thought and Development Studies, Mahatma Gandhi University, as the resource person for the session. And also to note, we have Professor Istvan Person in the audience. We are honored to have you, sir. Now, I would like to invite Dr. Zainul Abid, Assistant Professor, Department of Islamic History, to chair the session. Sir, please.
Good morning, all of you. Today is the second day of MESKCON International Conference, and this is the second session in this hall. We are honored to an eminent academic scholar among Kerala, Dr. M.H. Ilyas, completed his postdoc from Oxford University, Oxford Islamic Studies Center. His graduation from MES Asmami College in Botany, Masters from MG University International Relations, PhD from Jawaharlal Nehru University in West Asian Studies. Then he worked as the assistant professor in Mannarkkad Center for West Asian Studies in University of Calicut. From that period, I have a close relation with Ilyas sir. Then he again went to Oxford Center for Islamic Studies for his postdoctoral fellowship. And after he also completed other postdoc from Southern Denmark University. He visited almost all the universities in Europe, Asia, and West Asia also. He also completed a project with the support of Oman government. Anyway, we have honored a wonderful, a great, eminent personality from Islamic studies, Oriental studies. Another interesting fact, presently he working as the Director of Gandhian Studies, Director of Gandhian Studies in Mahatma Gandhi University, Kottayam. Last 10 years, I worked as the Director of India Arab Cultural Center, Jamia Millia Islamia, and he appointed as the Associate Professor of West Asian Studies in Jamia Millia Islamia in 2009. Anyway, I'm not to prolong my introductory remark and presidential address. Today, Ilyas will deliver an interesting area that is political and methodological reflections from South Asia, Indian Ocean, and Arab world. These few words, just conclude my presidential address on behalf of MES Kalladi College and Department of Islamic History and also MESKCON Conference Committee. I am inviting for the presentation of Ilyas sir. Sir, please.
Good morning, everyone. As the topic indicates, I would like to speak on research in the Islamic context, methodological and political reflections from the Arab world, from South Asia, and from the Indian Ocean region. I've put it together, taking experience from three different places and three different contexts as well. how Islam or Islamic studies as a discipline has been taught, has being taught and being researched, and about also about the new directions towards the the experience are altogether different in different contexts, but we can see some similarities among some patterns being emerged within the new context. So I would like to speak on that, and I would actually start with certain historical things, which I would take as a starting point or entry point to the theme of this talk. So I would actually, start with a story, which is very popular, which has been repeated in many books. I am taking this particular story from an interesting work of Eric Hobson, who was a British historian, who was famous for the writings on nationalism and writings on the kind of or cross cultural, cross regional kind of interactions among the European countries. This story is about the travel of Spaniards from Europe. Spaniards were one of the pioneers of European navigators who reached different parts of the world. And some of them went to, I don't know whether it is a true story or a kind of narrative which is in wider circulation in the region, but it talks of kind of encounter they had with the people of Latin America, where he met the locals and where he got called. The people got called and they brought it back to Spain, and they kept it for a longer period of time without any kind of knowledge how to use it. And so they kept it idle for many years, for a long while. And when they went next time, second time, they got potato. You know what is potato? Urlakidan, or aloo in Hindi, which they brought back to Spain, and they started cultivating it. That cultivation of potato eventually leads to the creation of a civilization, which we now call European civilization, which brought people together, and people started engaging in a kind of collective living, collective cultivation, which gradually led to the construction of knowledge, how certain crops or how certain technologies can be used to develop the capacities of farmers. And parallel to this, they got some technologies, they borrowed it from China, where they went. I'm talking about Europe, not about Spain exclusively, but Europeans, they got some knowledge from China, something from the Arab world, Palestine, and the larger Levant, and from India. They brought it together, put it together into kind of production of European knowledge, which became European knowledge. And interestingly, how do you locate Arab world in this knowledge production? See, the production of knowledge, as all of you are very well aware of, he is a historian of intellectual traditions. He deals with, Professor Istawan deals with intellectual history. But I would say something about the kind of travel of knowledge, which actually started in Greece, where you had several eminent scholars like Plato, Aristotle. They were the pioneers of knowledge production in the systematic, modern, advanced form, not modern, advanced form, which their works became widespread and traveled all the way to the Arab region through the translations of some of the work, mainly in mathematics and astronomy, which created a kind of mingling of knowledge from two traditions, from West and from the East, or from the Orient, which spawned several works with interesting elements taken from two worlds apart, which went on for a long time. And you have histories or instances of conflict between the religion and science, or religion and knowledge, as you have seen with Galileo, and which, everywhere, including, clergies, including in the Arab world, the clergies had some sort of issues with knowledge production, which sometimes led to a direct conflict between these two groups, scholars and the ulamas, or the clergies clergies at large. So which, just 1 second. I'll use some water because I'm that. So, if you look at the knowledge, which the different types of knowledge, whether mathematics or philosophy or theology or whatever the form of knowledge, these were more of intersectional, more of mixed, without any kind of boundaries, without any kind of pigeonholes. The knowledges were not kept in a pigeonhole, not kept in a box. So there was a mingling of different types of knowledge, and people also engaged in the knowledge production were not considered as specialized in certain field of knowledge, but they were into philosophy, they were into mathematics, they were into other related fields, not even related fields. Their expertise spread across many disciplines, what we call now interdisciplinary or multidisciplinary or cross-disciplinary. In the Western world, the European continent, the knowledge was tied or linked to Christian religion. Of course, secular knowledges, I'm not ignoring that in other word, but predominantly tied up with religion. And in the Arabian Peninsula also, you have certain instances of how the ruling dynasties patronized the knowledge production, which was very evident in most of the Arab countries, and where you had also sort of sort of a conflict, which emerged with the scholars and ulamas, so which went on for a longer period of time. And what you see after the colonial invasion is an interesting turn in knowledge production. Sorry, it's not going back. Next one. Sorry, next one. No. Yeah. So, what happened with the colonialism? Colonialism, there was a sort of monopolization of knowledge, monopolization of truth, monopolization of facts. Which we would understand with a sort of, establishing a hegemony or dominating over the knowledge production. Their knowledge became the knowledge. Their knowledge became the only knowledge. The other knowledges were completely sidelined or marginalized by the colonial powers. That you have seen in Ayurveda. Ayurveda was completely sidelined by allopathy. Allopathy got a prominence. Allopathy doctors, allopathy practitioners started claiming that this is the only knowledge which is more effective by sidelining the other forms of medicine, other traditions of medicine which existed in India, Africa and China as well. So this led to a kind of specialization, compartmentalization of knowledge. As you see in the previous context, you were an open-ended kind of knowledge, where different knowledges mingle together to form different experiments. But here you saw a kind of compartmentalization of knowledge, putting knowledge into different boxes. So that was a kind of phenomena which emerged with the colonization of knowledge. Colonization had the different manifestations, political manifestations, economic manifestations. What happened in the field of knowledge was very important in the context of India, in the context of Arab world as well. So what I suggest is actually to have a kind of, so what the situation what emerged was, othering of other knowledge, othering of person, people we have seen. Are you getting it? Should I repeat in Malayalam? Should I mix it up, Malayalam and English, or only English?
That's good.
If you are not getting it, I'll translate some of the things what I speak to Malayalam, or I would use both Malayalam and English. Okay. So, എന്താ സംഭവിച്ചെന്ന് വെച്ചാൽ യൂറോപ്പിൽ കൊളോണിയലിസം വന്ന സമയത്ത് മറ്റ് നോളജിന്റെ ധാരകളെ, മറ്റ് അറിവിനെല്ലാം തടയപ്പെടുന്നൊരവസ്ഥ ഉണ്ടായിരുന്നു. എന്ന് വെച്ചാൽ ഒരു നോളജ് എന്ന് പറയുന്നത് യൂറോപ്യൻ നോളജ് മാത്രം, മോഡേൺ നോളജ് became the only knowledge and became the representational one by sidelining, by marginalizing other sources of knowledge, including Indian, African and Arab production of knowledge. So there was a tendency to monopolize, establish hegemony over the knowledge production by the Westerners, by the Europeans to be more exact. Accordingly, two kinds of knowledge system emerged. One was narrative knowledge. Narrative knowledge refers to, it actually refers to the kind of production of knowledge which, considered to be by all practical purposes, primitive, pre-modern, not matching with the knowledge what they produce in the Western continents. So, narrative knowledge, as we have seen in most of the Indian context, it transfers from one person to another through oral history. You have, there is a session on oral history in this seminar. I went through the, I could see while going through the schedule of the seminar. Oral history became a prominent method, especially in the Islamic context. Islamic context, voice or sound is more, it overpowers others, visual and other forms of transfer of knowledge. Orality is very important in Islamic context than textuality and visuality. Textuality means, transfer of knowledge through text. Visuality means through visual means. Orality means through oral forms. Orality became much more prominent in the Islamic context than visuality. If you take the Hindu context, visuality is more important. You see the visuals of deity, you see the image of deity, or you see the bust of deity. It provides a sort of darshan. Darshan is a kind of visual activity. You come into contact with the deity through your eyes. Seeing is important, and to reciprocate it, the deity would give you blessings through the eye contact. So that eye contact became very important in Hinduism. Islam, there is no deity, there is no image of deity,
So it became blasphemous. To compensate it with, we created a lot of images or designs, which replace the use of images of human being or animals, which is of course forbidden, haram in Islamic context. So Islam is more of a oral language than visual and textual language. It became textual after the publication of first Quran in textual form. Till then, textuality was also not very prominent in Islamic tradition. So what I'm trying to say is that the knowledge which got transferred through the other means, oral and visual means, became irrelevant. What has been published, what has been spread through publication became the authentic knowledge. That means of transfer of knowledge became an issue for knowledge production in the non-European context. So accordingly, two kinds of knowledges emerged. One was narrative knowledge, another one scientific knowledge. Scientific knowledge, as you see in the European context, something which is verifiable. There should be some experiments or some evidences, some proof for knowledge production, which is completely impossible in the context of Islam. Experience of God. Experience of God in every context, not just in Islamic context, but in every other context, experience of God is something which you cannot prove, which you cannot verify with a particular experiment. So it's not verifiable, it's not drawn to verification. So all these kind of knowledges which are not verifiable, which are not, the validity of which cannot be tested with an experiment became unscientific or became narrative knowledge. Scientific knowledge on the other side, is something that can be verified, validated with some sort of experiments. So verifiability became the norm. Verifiability became a kind of statement for the validation of a particular piece of knowledge. So this you see in the context of Arab world. There was a sort of conflict between narrative knowledge and scientific knowledge, and people show a tendency to switch over to scientific knowledge from the narrative knowledge. And now, interestingly, we have a kind of colonial era. After colonialism, the narrative knowledge became very important. They have come back. They have produced a deep impact on the knowledge production, especially in the Arab context. Many scholars who have attempted in bringing back the narrative knowledge in the form of oral traditions, and if you look at the kind of developments happened during that period, most of the texts which were either spread through textual forms or textual means or through the oral means, put into press and made or spawned, hundreds and thousands of books and other forms of publications. Printing in Islamic context, if you look at the history of printing, even in Kerala, what you can see is that the books which published by the scholars, with the advent of printing technology, mostly were either transferred through, compiled through the scholars, or spread in the form of oral history. Moidin Mala, for example, which was originally came out in 1607. It's not 05 or 67. When was that? 16? No. 1607 or 5. 7, which was published after a longer period of time. It took almost 200 years or 300 years to get it published. So that gap shows that there was a prominence for orality in Islamic tradition, and the other forms of means of transfer of knowledge were not considered very, even sometimes even blasphemous. We had the first translation of Quran only in 1920s. Arabic Malayalam, which came little earlier by Mayangote Elaya, but the Malayalam translation came, P.K. Mosamoli, I think it's P.K. Mosamoli, who translated Mayangote Elaya published in Arabic Malayalam, but the formal Malayalam translation was done much later. So which shows that, textuality and visuality had a very, it was something which not very digestive for Muslims in all over the world, not just in India or in Kerala. And, but this post-colonial turn which I am referring to is with which you saw a kind of publication of a lot of things which were completely abandoned or which were completely ignored by the earlier scholars, which was with the purpose of bringing back the textuality and orality in Islamic tradition. And the scholars, they attempted in, creating a dialogue with previously excluded people who were excluded from the mainstream history, people were totally, unheard of, or people were, whose voices were not visible, not audible in the mainstream history writing. I would repeat it in Malayalam. ഒരു പ്രത്യേക തരത്തിലുള്ള ഒരു ടേൺ സംഭവിക്കുകയാണ്. കാരണം പഴയ ആലോചനകളും പഴയ എഴുത്തുകളൊക്കെ ആളുകൾ തിരിച്ചു കൊണ്ടുവരാൻ തുടങ്ങി. കാരണം ആളുകൾക്ക് ഇസ്ലാമിൽ പ്രത്യേകിച്ച് അറബ് വേൾഡിലായാലും ഇസ്ലാമിക് മറ്റു സൗത്ത് ഏഷ്യയിലായാലും ഇന്തോനേഷ്യയിലൊക്കെ പഴയ അതുവരെ പ്രചരിച്ചിരുന്ന നോളജിന് ഒരു പ്രത്യേകത ഉണ്ടായിരുന്നു. ആ നോളജ് എപ്പോഴും കുറെ കൂടെ ശാസ്ത്രീയമായ അറിവുകൾ അങ്ങനെയൊക്കെ ആയിരുന്നു ഇതിന്. മാത്രമല്ല ഒരു കാര്യം സമർത്ഥിക്കാൻ പറ്റുന്ന, ശാസ്ത്രീയമായി സമർത്ഥിക്കാൻ പറ്റുന്ന അറിവുകൾ മാത്രമേ അറിവുകൾ എന്നുള്ളൊരു ധാരണ ആൾക്കാർക്ക് നിലനിന്നിരുന്നു. അത് പൊളിച്ചെഴുതിക്കൊണ്ട് പഴയ തരത്തിൽ പ്രചരിച്ചിരുന്ന നോളജുകൾ കൂടെ തിരിച്ചു കൊണ്ടുവരാൻ ശ്രമിച്ചു, ഇസ്ലാമിക് നോളജുകൾ. അത് വരുന്നത് ശരിക്കും ഒരു പോസ്റ്റ് കൊളോണിയൽ ടേൺ ആയിട്ട് വരുന്നത്, വിച്ച് വാസ് വെരി visible in the Islamic context in all different places, from Arabia. Of course, Arabia's case is slightly different, though we can generalize the situation of Arabia, generalize the situation of India. India also had two different contexts. What happened in Kerala was totally different from what happened in northern part of India because of our closeness to the Arab world. Whatever we had it from Arab world, not from the northern states of India, because of our proximity or closeness, or because of our affinity with the Arab world. So that also reflected in the knowledge production in Kerala. And if you look at the history of reform movement in Kerala, most of the things we borrowed from the Arab world. Of course, we have a post-traditional basis for reform movement. We had three major streams which influenced reform movement in Kerala. One was Sir Said's movement in northern part of India. Another one was Egyptian Tanweeriya movement. Third one was from Saudi Arabia, which made a greater influence over the people in Kerala. And if you go to Africa, you had several other sources of knowledge for the scholars, which collectively influenced or collectively shaped the knowledge production in this part of the world with the post-colonial turn. And I'm also talking about two, related kind of frameworks which we witnessed to in the Arab and Islamic world. One was Orientalism. What is Orientalism? Most of you have heard of Edward Said. Who was Edward Said? Palestinian-born scholar, migrated to US after the catastrophe in Palestine. He became a post-colonial writer, and his Pardon? Best known for Orientalism, the work Orientalism, which was published in 79. Very good. 79. In which he criticized, he problematized the way the Westerners looking into the Eastern societies, not just societies, culture, geography, everything. Problematized way of understanding the Arab world, the Eastern world. Eastern world was considered as a world of uncivilized people, barbaric people, and sort of other and self-assumed status of self. Self was Europe, other was non-Europe or the Arab world. You have a reflection of these things in literature, reflection in cinema. Cinema, if you look at Hollywood cinema, most of the villains are from Arab world or from Africa or from other non-European context. So which all represented a kind of Orientalism in knowledge production, not just knowledge production, but in every aspects of life, every aspects of knowledge production. And another interesting framework which we, in the Indian context we are familiar with is subaltern studies. Subaltern studies is just a retelling of history of India, from the perspective of subalterns or subalterns. Subaltern is a term coined by Antonio Gramsci, which refers to the people who are completely marginalized from history, completely sidelined from history. And this is the interesting turn in history writing, which speaks for retelling Indian history or retelling the history of the world through the perspective or through the point of view of subalterns. There are many proponents for that. Now there is a post-subaltern movement. The major scholars who were associated with that movement was where Ranjit Guha, Gyanendra Pandey, Dibesh Chakravarti, Partha Chatterjee, mostly Bengali scholars in diaspora. And we have seen a sort of retelling, everywhere in the world, not just in India. It happened in Europe, it happened in, especially in Eastern Europe, it happened in Africa, it happened in, China, everywhere it happened. Kind of retelling, reorienting the history. If you look at the first set of writings in Arab world, the first text was written by Mohsin Muttabaqani, who was an Arab, who was a Saudi, educated in Britain. He, much before Edward Said, he wrote a piece on this Oriental issue, the Oriental framework, Oriental gaze in writing the history of Arabs. Arab history, as we have seen with Indian history, that is the case with most of the histories, non-European histories. The first set of histories are, any history students here? Students of history? The first set of Islamic history. The first set of histories were written mostly by the European scholars. They had a distorted version of history, which was not matching with the context of India. Attempted mostly by the British scholars or the other colonial scholars. The second wave of history, second batch of historians were mainly from within India but educated outside India, mostly in the Western universities. They had a kind of inherited nationalistic view and sort of Brahminical orientation also. So which was again questioned by the historians who come mainly from either from the Dalit context or from the minority context or from the diasporic context. Most of them were having a kind of identity which was previously problematized or marginalized. So the profile of these scholars in general is very interesting. Gopal Guru wrote about, he is not an historian, but he has reoriented history writing, and he has contributed to the reorienting attempt, which became very popular in the Indian history, Indian historiography later, with his own experience of humiliation. Humiliation, he has, according to him, has created a lot of political subjectivities, which in turn has led to rewriting the history of people, who were, completely unheard of before, or previously totally unheard of. So that attempt was well accepted in Arab world. There is a kind of movement in Arab world called subaltern Arab historians. They are very popular in Arab history. They are very popular in writing the modern history of Arab world. There is a process of decolonizing Arab history, which was chiefly attempted by the Arab historians belonging to the category of subaltern historians. Yeah. So now we move on to Islamic studies. Why Islamic studies is important in the new context? What is the relevance of Islamic studies in the new context? Islam in social science has been used in two different contexts. The first is because of the kind of social, historical, economic and political intervention which Islam makes in the world. And second, for it's actually methodological mainly, kind of unlearning process, kind of de-education process which Islam engaged in, or a sort of critical paradigm which Islam offers for the study of social science. And there are two related questions. Can the scholars of Islamic studies create their own world, create their own space, or the current method of study of social science is so plural, so accommodative to adjust with the Islamic study or to accommodate Islamic study? There are two related questions. We have accordingly many theories which have come up in the contemporary context. I would go to that. The first one is so these are some of the general contexts with Islam is in which Islam is discussed or Islam is becoming more popular. The first is the context of diaspora, mobility of people, mobility of mainly trans-regional migrants, refugees from different parts of the Arab world to the Western world, and cultural exclusivity they create, the kind of enclaves they create in the Western world, and of course of fundamentalism within thought. And Islam is also known for Islamic revivalism, Islamic political activism, or we call it, and I have a reservation for that word, political Islam, which is not a politically sensitive word. Rather, I use Islamic political activism, which is also very important in the study of Islamic studies. And most unfortunate part is the less importance which we give to theology. Theology is completely ignored. Theological studies is a sort of Cinderella subject which we never engage in, which we never understand, which we never comprehend. If you look at the the best example which I would inculcate in this context is reform movement in Kerala. Reform movement, whether it is Hindu reform movement or Christian reform movement, Islamic reform movement, in all these contexts, you can see that theology is most untouched part. We know what happened some 200 years ago in Christianity. We are completely unaware of what happened to Judaism 200 years ago in Kerala. We are all talking about some social projects which all the religious communities engage in, like untouchability, like entry of women in mosque, like education of Muslim women in secondary, lower primary and secondary schools. We never talk about what happened to religion, what happened to theology, what happened to religious philosophy. These are all completely ignorant, completely darker period of time. Darker, and we never engaged in discussing about the importance of theology in shaping the Muslims or Hindus or Christians or Jews in Kerala. We never, it's unfortunately less discussed part in social science. We have hundreds of biographies of Narayana Guru. No biography is there touching his religious ideas or theology. Very few. Only one person has attempted writing the theological life of Narayana Guru, which is T. Bhaskaran, who was a professor of history in Kerala University. All others attempted in writing his social ideas. So philosophy, theology, unfortunately left untouched by many of our scholars. This is very evident in the context of Islam. No one has written about how theologically Vakka Maulvi intervened, how theologically Makti Tangal intervened. For us, Makti Tangal is a social reformer, not a religious reformer. For us, Makti Tangal is a person who standardized Malayalam language, or who standardized Arabic Malayalam language. For us, he is not a person who critically engaged with the Christian history or the history of Christian theology or the theology which was brought in from the Western world to Kerala. His major contribution is a theological one, no doubt about it. But we never touched that part because of our reservation, because of our lack of understanding of what is theological change, what happened in the 19th century. It's actually started from 19th century with the coming of 18th century with the coming of missionaries, and it had a very dynamic and kind of engagement till the middle of 1920s, 30s actually. So no attempt has been made so far seriously to understand what happened to Islam or what happened to Christianity. Christianity is a very interesting community to study about in Kerala. If you make a parallel between what happened in Europe, you see several similar instances in Kerala history. They have discussed about everything. The Krishna missionaries have discussed about so many things, because they were exposed to the Western world, and which made a lot of resonance in other communities also. Makti Tangal responded to what the Christian missionaries attempted in spreading, and similar kind of attempts were made by Chatambi Swamigal. But we never know what Chatambi Swamigal has contributed to the idea of reform in Kerala, and what Jewish people, they were the pioneers of reform in Kerala because of their connection with Western Christianity, Western Judaism. If you look at the coming of people from Eastern Europe, they were actually maintaining a close connection with the people, their counterparts in Eastern Europe and Western Europe as well. Through this connection, a lot of literature of Hashkala, the reform movement, came to Kerala, and which made a very greater impact on the theological discourse in Kerala. So that is completely ignorant in Kerala history, and maybe because of the lack of expertise in three or four languages. Hebrew. No historian knows. No historian knows Arabic. No, I mean, I'm talking about the historians claim to be nationalistic historians, claim to be the historians who have written complete history of Kerala. They unfortunately do not know Arabic, unfortunately do not know Hebrew, they do not know Syriac, they do not know Arabic Malayalam, they do not know Karzuni. These were the languages, major languages which existed and which, in terms of trade, in terms of, the faith, these four languages, or mainly the Semitic languages, were very prominent role, they had a prominent role in knowledge construction in Kerala, but unfortunately because of the language, lack of language expertise, unfortunately because of the understanding of what happened outside Kerala, our history is limited to the history of land-based people. It never, still has no concern over the trade, maritime travel of people. And if you, I don't know whether you have studied about it, but most of these texts produced in Kerala had takers in various other parts, like Fathul Muin. Fathul Muin, it's a basic sacred text. Every household will be having a copy of it. But Fathul Muin was produced originally in Kerala, but read mostly in Southeast Asia and the Arab world. I had an experience while I was working in Oxford. A person came to me asking for a copy of Fathul Muin. I said, I have a copy back in Kerala. I would bring it when I come back. He was he told me that he was looking for a copy of that for many years. He was so excited to see that, I have a copy of it back in Kerala. I brought him and I gave it to him. He was very happy. So which shows that, there were certain texts which were originate or which were produced in certain context, specific context, but had a kind of trans-regional travel and had a trans-regional impact on different communities. It shows the world was very well connected, Islamic world or Jewish world or Christian world. But we never think of, while sitting in Kerala, with a limited perspective of history, with a limited understanding of history, especially of maritime history, we never think of the cross-cultural, traditional, regional travel of text. This is completely ignored in the writing of Kerala history. This contribution to Semitic religions, contributions of people who have come to Kerala through the trade routes. Yeah, Talalazad and all, I would skip it because it's too. Yeah, I'm talking about some of the new directions in. Yeah, sorry. Yeah, now it's an interesting turn. There is an interesting turn in Islamic studies, which you would see with a new perspective from the sea. Sea is something which you need to study about. How do they come? How do they travel from one place to another? The travel of text, travel of ideas, travel of goods, travel of objects. This is very interesting to study about, and the starting point should be the travel of people. And there is an interesting work published by Sultan Muhammad al-Qasimi, the title of which is The Myth of Arab Piracy. And in that particular work he has made an interesting kind of understanding of his own family, which is otherwise portrayed as the family of pirates, family of marauders in the British history. So he demystified the history of his own family. He deconstructed the history of his own family with a very notable, very remarkable work entitled The Myth of Arab Piracy. and followed by it, you had a lot of attempts in rewriting the history of families in the Arab world, clans in the Arab world, regions in the Arab world. The second most important work was Graves of Tarim. Tarim is a place in Yemen where you have a lot of migrants from that place to other continents, including Kerala. You have a lot of Hadramis from Tarim, from different parts of Yemen, came and settled in Kerala, from the place called Hadramaut. So this is about the genealogical connections, genealogical connectivity, which shaped diaspora from Yemen. It's an interesting book. That is supposed to be the second most interesting book, in that series. Followed by the myth of Arab piracy in the Gulf. Now, another interesting thing is that there is a reflection. What happens in Arab world has a reflection in Kerala through a wide network of young scholars from Kerala studying outside universities, mostly in Delhi and Hyderabad University. They are all using a new set of sources. Previously Arabic Malayalam sources were not used. Syriac texts were not used, and Hebrew sources were not used. But now these young scholars have brought back the original sources. They are having the knowledge of Hebrew, they are having the knowledge of Syriac, they are having the knowledge of Arabic. They started de-educating what they learned from the British scholars or from the nationalist scholars. They also belong to a kind of group of subaltern scholars. The sources are mainly Arabic Malayalam, Hebrew, Persian, and unfortunately, as I mentioned earlier, most of the earlier scholars, most of the first generation, second generation, third generation scholars did not know these 4-5 languages, which were very integral in trade and faith. And another attempt is to refocus Muslim history from the traditional domains of land, nation, and reform towards very interesting, domains like identity, travel, and resistance. As you all know, the Mapla Rebellion of 1921 has produced so many interesting works, including Yusuf Ali's work. So it shows a kind of refocusing, reorientation of history, reorientation of narratives, reorientation of the framework which we use for longer period of time, and with a very thoughtful consideration of the movements of people, cultures, and forms of governance across the Indian Ocean region. I'm stopping with this. Now the floor is open for discussion.
Arabs usually use the knowledge kind of spirituality and rationality, and there is no kind of science and evidence for that. But there is a book named The Divine Reality. You read, I don't know how you read it. So it is saying that about the rationality and morality which comes from the elements which we know that all human beings are from this world, and this world has many kind of things, but nothing have any kind of rationality or morality, but the humans being have. So the Arabic knowledge about the rationality and spirituality must be considered, and what do you think about that?
Sorry, I don't say that Arabs did not engage with rationality and reason. What I said was that the knowledge which emerged in Europe became considered by the non-Arabs, the Westerners, as narrative knowledge. Though they engaged Arab scholars. You have a umpteen number of plethora of Arab scholars who have attempted in writing about reason, writing about rationality. Engagement with modernity was very prominent in Arab world, but in a different way. And if you look at the origins of modernity in Europe, I give you the example of Latin America, I give you the example of China, I give you the example of Palestine. These places were famous for technology, famous for knowledge production. They also had some sort of engagement with what we call ideas, what we call modern. They had engagement with rationality. Ashrates, Mutasalites, they were very famous for rationalism. In India, we had what is it called? There was a movement in Charvaga. Charvaga philosophers were very famous for their rational thinking. I did not say that they did not engage with rationality and reason. What I said was that the colonial scholars bifurcated knowledge into two. One, they said it's unscientific, not verified, not validated. So, the transfer of which is mainly through oral means. And their knowledge, they claimed that it's scientific because we have verified it, we have validated it, and it transfers from one generation to another through certain standard means, not through oral traditions.
MES ഇല്ല സർ, ഇതുവരെ കണ്ടിട്ടില്ല, പക്ഷെ ഒരുപാട് കേട്ടിട്ടുണ്ട്. എനിക്ക് തോന്നുന്നത് ഇന്ന് കേരളത്തിലെ ഇസ്ലാമിക് ഹിസ്റ്ററിയുടെ തലതൊട്ടപ്പൻ എന്നൊക്കെ വിശേഷിപ്പിക്കാൻ പറ്റിയ ഒരാളെന്ന് ഞാൻ വിചാരിക്കുന്നുണ്ട്. സാർ എഴുതിയ റിസർച്ച് ഇൻ ഇസ്ലാമിക് കോണ്ടെക്സ്റ്റ് എന്നുള്ള ബുക്ക് ആമസോണിൽ ഏകദേശം ഒരു 10,000 രൂപയോളം വില വരുന്ന ഒരു ബുക്കായിട്ടാണ് കാണുന്നത്. അപ്പം അത്രയും മൂല്യവത്തായ ഒരു ഗ്രന്ഥരചനയൊക്കെ ഒരുപാട് ഗ്രന്ഥരചനകൾ നടത്തിയിട്ടുള്ള ഒരാളാണ് നിൽക്കുന്നത് എന്നുള്ളത് കണ്ടപ്പോൾ മനസ്സിലായില്ല, പേര് കണ്ടപ്പോൾ മനസ്സിലായി. അപ്പം എനിക്ക് ചോദിക്കാനുള്ളത്, ഇസ്ലാമിക് സ്റ്റഡീസ് എന്നുള്ള ഒരു സബ്ജക്റ്റിന് ഇന്നത്തെ ലോകത്തുണ്ടാകുന്ന ലോകത്ത് ഇപ്പോൾ നിലവിലുള്ള ഒരു ഡിമാൻഡ് അല്ലെങ്കിൽ അതിൻ്റെ ഒരു ട്രെൻഡിനെ കുറിച്ചിട്ട് സാറൊന്ന് പറയും.
ആദ്യം താങ്ക് യു ഫോർ ദ കോംപ്ലിമെന്റ്സ്. ജസ്റ്റ് എ കോംപ്ലിമെന്റ്, നോട്ട് ഈ ഇസ്ലാമിക് സ്റ്റഡീസിന് എന്താണ് ഇമ്പോർട്ടൻറ്റ്? വളരെ ഇൻട്രസ്റ്റിംഗ് ആയിട്ടുള്ള ക്വസ്റ്റ്യൻ ആണ്. പലപ്പോഴും നമ്മൾ പലതരത്തിൽ കാണുന്ന, പല രീതിയിൽ കാണുന്ന ഒരു പഠന വിഭാഗമാണ് ഇസ്ലാമിക് സ്റ്റഡീസ് എന്ന് പറയുന്നത്. ചില ആൾക്കാർ അതിൻ്റെ തിയോളജിക്കൽ ആസ്പെക്ട്സ് പഠിക്കുന്നു, ചില ആൾക്കാർ അതിൻ്റെ ആന്ത്രപ്പോളജി പഠിക്കുന്നു, ചില ആൾക്കാർ അതിൻ്റെ ഇന്ത്യൻ ഓഷ്യൻ സ്റ്റഡീസിൻ്റെ കോണ്ടെക്സ്റ്റിൽ പഠിക്കാറുണ്ട്. പക്ഷെ എൻ്റെ ഒരു ഇതെന്ന് വെച്ചാൽ ഇതിനെല്ലാം ഇന്ന് ലോകത്തിൽ എങ്ങനെ, ഇപ്പോൾ ഞാൻ നേരത്തെ പറഞ്ഞു, രണ്ട് തരത്തിൽ ഇസ്ലാമിക് സ്റ്റഡീസ് ഇമ്പോർട്ടൻ്റ് ആവുന്നു. ഒന്ന്, ഇസ്ലാം നടത്തിയിട്ടുള്ള ചരിത്രപരവും സാമൂഹികപരവും രാഷ്ട്രീയപരവും സാമ്പത്തികപരമായ ഇടപെടലിനെ കുറിച്ചുള്ള ചർച്ചകളുണ്ട്. പല രീതിയിൽ ഇസ്ലാം ലോകചരിത്രത്തിൽ നൽകിയ സംഭാവനയെക്കുറിച്ചും ഒക്കെ പഠിക്കുന്നുണ്ട് ആൾക്കാർ. അല്ലെങ്കിൽ സാമ്പത്തിക, ഇപ്പോൾ സക്കാത്തിനെ കുറിച്ച് അങ്ങനെയൊക്കെ പഠിക്കുന്നുണ്ട്. അല്ലെങ്കിൽ ചരിത്രപരമായിട്ട് നടത്തിയ സംഭാവനകളെക്കുറിച്ച്, അല്ലെങ്കിൽ സാമൂഹികപരമായിട്ട് നടത്തിയ സംഭാവനകളെക്കുറിച്ച്, ഇപ്പോൾ ഇസ്ലാമിക് കുടുംബ വ്യവസ്ഥയെക്കുറിച്ച്, ഇസ്ലാമിക രാഷ്ട്ര വ്യവസ്ഥയെക്കുറിച്ച്, ഇസ്ലാമിക ഉമ്മത്തിനെ കുറിച്ചൊക്കെ പഠിക്കുന്നുണ്ട്. അതോടൊപ്പം തന്നെ ഏറ്റവും പ്രധാനമായിട്ടുള്ള കാര്യം, ഇസ്ലാം എന്ന് പറയുന്നത് മെത്തഡോളജിക്കലി എങ്ങനെ ഇസ്ലാം പുതിയൊരു രീതിശാസ്ത്രം കൊണ്ടുവന്നു. നമുക്കിതൊരു പരിചയമില്ലാത്ത രീതിശാസ്ത്രമാണ്, വിച്ച് വി ഹാവ് ടേക്കൺ ആക്ച്വലി ഫ്രം ദി വാലിഡേഷൻ ഓഫ് ഹദീസ്. കാരണം ഹദീസിൻ്റെ നമ്മുടെ രീതിശാസ്ത്രപരമായിട്ട് ആദ്യത്തെ ഒരു എക്സ്പെരിമെന്റ് എന്ന് പറഞ്ഞാൽ ഹദീസ് കമ്പൈൽ ചെയ്യലാണ്. അപ്പോൾ ഹദീസ് ഏതാണ്ട് 1 ലക്ഷം ഹദീസ് ഇപ്പോൾ 3000-ഓളൊക്കെ ചുരുക്കുന്നുണ്ട്. ഇതെങ്ങനെയെന്ന് വെച്ചാൽ അതിൻ്റെ ഒരു എക്സ്പെരിമെൻ്റ് ഉണ്ട്. വെച്ചാൽ അതിനൊരു എക്സാമ്പിൾ പറയാമെന്ന് സാറിന്, ഈ മരുഭൂമിയിൽ ഇങ്ങനെ ഇവർ അന്വേഷിച്ച് പോകണം സഹാബികൾ ഈ ഹദീസിൻ്റെ അതിൻ്റെ ജെനുവിനിറ്റിയെ കുറിച്ച് തീരുമാനിക്കാൻ വേണ്ടി, ഏതൊക്കെയാണ് ജെനുവിൻ ഹദീസ്, ഏതൊക്കെയാണ് ജെനുവിൻ ഇല്ലാത്ത തള്ളിക്കളയാൻ വേണ്ടി സഹീൽ ഏതാണ് ഹദീസ് എന്ന് പറയുന്നതിനെ കുറിച്ച് അറിയാൻ വേണ്ടിയിട്ട് അന്വേഷിച്ച് പോകണം. അപ്പോൾ ഒരു സ്ഥലത്ത് റിപ്പോർട്ട് ചെയ്യുന്നത് മരുഭൂമിന്ന്, അവിടെ ഒരാളുടെ കയ്യിലൊരു ഹദീസ്, ഒരു പ്രവാചകന്റെ പ്രധാനപ്പെട്ട ഒരു വാക്യം കയ്യിലുണ്ടെന്ന് പറയുന്നത്. അങ്ങനെ ഒരു അന്വേഷണം, അത് ഹദീസ് അതുവരെ ജനുവിനാണെന്ന് തെളിയിച്ചിട്ടില്ല, അന്വേഷിക്കാൻ വേണ്ടി പോകുന്നു. അവിടെ ചെല്ലുമ്പോഴാണ് പറയുന്നത്, ഇദ്ദേഹം പോകുന്ന വഴിയിൽ കുറെ ഒട്ടകങ്ങളെ കാണും. ഈ ഒട്ടകങ്ങൾ വെള്ളം കുടിക്കാതെ ഇങ്ങനെ അലഞ്ഞു തിരിഞ്ഞ് നടക്കുന്നു. അപ്പൊ അവർ തിരിച്ചു പോരുന്നുണ്ട്. കാരണം ഈ ഒട്ടകങ്ങൾക്ക് വെള്ളം കൊടുക്കാത്ത മനുഷ്യൻ ഒരിക്കലും ശരിയായ വിഭജനം റിപ്പോർട്ട് ചെയ്യാൻ സാധ്യതയില്ലാന്ന് തിരിച്ചു. അത്രയും സൂക്ഷ്മമായിരുന്നു അതിന്റെ രീതിശാസ്ത്രം എന്ന് പറയുന്നത്. അപ്പൊ അത്തരം രീതിശാസ്ത്രങ്ങളെ കോർത്തിണക്കിക്കൊണ്ടുള്ള ഒരു തുടർച്ചയായിട്ട് ഇസ്ലാമിന്റെ ആദ്യകാലം മുതൽ പ്രസന്റ് വരെയുള്ള ഒരു തുടർച്ചയായിട്ടുള്ള രീതിശാസ്ത്രത്തിലുണ്ട്. ഒന്ന്. രണ്ടാമത്തത് ഈ നേരത്തെ പറഞ്ഞില്ലേ, നമ്മൾ ഈ കടൽ അല്ലെങ്കിൽ സമുദ്രത്തിലൂടെ വന്ന ആളുകളുടെ, നമുക്ക് ഒരു ഉദാഹരണം പറഞ്ഞുതരാം. വളരെ സിമ്പിൾ. ഞാൻ സ്ഥിരമായിട്ട് പറയുന്ന ഒരു ഉദാഹരണം, നമുക്ക് ആഗോളവൽക്കരണം, what comes to our mind when we think of globalization is present day globalization, which is originated in America, promoted by America, promoted by most of this Western world. But we had a globalization which existed some 500 years ago, 300 years ago, and you won't believe there was a person in a place called Mamburam who had 3 wives from 3 different subcontinents. Sayyid Alavi had 3 wives from 3 different subcontinents, from Timor in Indonesia, from Hadramaut in Yemen, from Koilandi in Kerala. It's unimaginable previously, unheard of previously, and it existed much before the present globalization. So we have several episodes, several instances of globalization. We were well connected, well integrated by so many players, integration of so many economies, integration of different cultures without a domination, without a hegemony of one particular culture. That is very important. Now, the present day globalization, what is different in present day globalization is there are certain hegemonic dominant powers. There is a domination of US, there is a domination. It's one-way traffic. The other one was two-way traffic. Or there were multiple ways to produce a sort of globalization. So we were well connected. And texts written in Kerala. I give you the example of Fathul Muin. It traveled all across the region. It was widely read by the people in Southeast Asia. It was widely read by the people in Southern Arabia. And many texts became influential in Kerala, including Bahaja and Tashmila, which led to the writing of texts including Moedin Mala. So we have several examples of travel of text, travel of people, travel of ideas. And I'll give you another one, which is very interesting. The leaders of reform movement, including Bakar Maulvi. Bakar Maulvi read Mahatma Gandhi first, not through his works, but through several of his translations published in Al-Manar, a journal which was a mouthpiece of reform movement in Egypt. So he got to know, Bakar Maulvi got to know, a person sitting in Kerala got to know about Mahatma Gandhi, who was sitting in Delhi, through the works of Arab scholars. It was very interesting. That globality, that world connection, that inter-regional connectivity was very important in Islamic history, which we love to ignore, which we love not to understand. That is the saddest part of this story. Here.
കോൺട്രിബ്യൂഷൻ ലെസ് ഡിസ്കസ്ഡ് ആണെന്ന് പറഞ്ഞു. അപ്പോൾ പ്രത്യേകം മെൻഷൻ ചെയ്തത് സെയ്ദ് സനാഉള്ള മക്തി തങ്ങൾ, മൗലവി, ഇവരുടെ ഒരു കമ്പാരിറ്റീവ് റീജിയനിലുള്ളൊരു തിയോളജിക്കൽ ഡയലോഗ്സ് ആണോ പിന്നെ അത്ര പ്രാധാന്യത്തോടുള്ള കണ്ടില്ല. ഞാൻ ചോദിക്കാൻ കാരണം ഇപ്പോൾ നമ്മളെ കേരളത്തിൽ ഇപ്പോൾ പറയപ്പെട്ട രണ്ടാളുകൾ തന്നെ ഒരു ഇന്നർ ദ കമ്മ്യൂണിറ്റി അവർ ബ്ലെയിം ചെയ്യപ്പെടുന്നത് അവരുടെ ഒരു തിയോളജിക്കൽ പാർട്ടിലുള്ള ഡയലോഗ്സും പിന്നെ അങ്ങനെയൊക്കെയുള്ള കോൺട്രിബ്യൂഷൻസും ആണല്ലോ. അപ്പോൾ ഇസ്ലാമിൻ്റെ ഉള്ളിലുള്ള റിഫോർമേഷൻ അവർ സ്വാഭാവികമായിട്ടും തിയോളജിക്കൽ പാർട്ടി കൂടെ ഇടപെട്ടിരുന്നു. അത് വൈഡ്ലി ഡിസ്കസ് ചെയ്യപ്പെടുന്ന ഒന്നുമാണ്. അപ്പോൾ സാർ ഇവിടെ പറഞ്ഞ അത്ര അവരത്ര അത് നമ്മൾ ചർച്ച ചെയ്യുന്നില്ല എന്ന് പറഞ്ഞത് കമ്പാരിറ്റീവ് റിലീജിയനിലുള്ള അവരുടെ തിയോളജിക്കൽ ഡയലോഗ്സ് ആണ്.
തീർച്ചയായിട്ടും. കാരണം മനസ്സിലായി. അതിൽ രണ്ടു തരത്തിലുള്ള ഒരു ഡിസ്കോഴ്സ് ഉണ്ട്. ഒന്ന് ഇന്റേണൽ ഡിസ്കോഴ്സ് ഉണ്ട്, ഒന്ന് ലാർജ്ലി ഒരു കേരള കോണ്ടെക്സ്റ്റിൽ അങ്ങനെ ഡിസ്കസ് ചെയ്യപ്പെടുന്ന ഒരു കൺസേൺ ഉണ്ട്. ഞാൻ ഉദ്ദേശിച്ചത് കേരളത്തിലാണ്. മറ്റേ കമ്മ്യൂണിറ്റി ഉള്ളിലുള്ള ഇപ്പോൾ അതിന് റെസ്പോൺസസ് ഉണ്ടാവും. കമ്മ്യൂണിറ്റി ഉള്ളിൽ ഇപ്പോൾ മക്തങ്ങൾ നടത്തിയ ഇടപെടലുകൾ, ഇന്റർവെൻഷൻസിന് പലയിടത്തും റെസ്പോൺസ് ഉണ്ടാവുന്നു, ഇപ്പോഴും റെസ്പോൺസ് ഉണ്ടായിക്കൊണ്ടിരിക്കുന്നുണ്ട്. പക്ഷേ പുറത്തുള്ള ഒരാൾക്ക് നമ്മളിപ്പോൾ ഞാനത് ഇൻക്ലൂഡിങ് നാരായണഗുരു ഒരു വേദാന്തിയായിരുന്നു. നാരായണഗുരുവിന്റെ ഹിന്ദു മതത്തിലുള്ള മതപരമായ ദൈവശാസ്ത്രപരമായ ഇടപെടലിനെ കുറിച്ച് നമുക്കൊന്നും ചോദിച്ചാറില്ല. നമ്മൾ പറയും അരിപ്പുറത്ത് പ്രതിഷ്ഠ നടത്തി, അല്ലെങ്കിൽ മറ്റോടത്ത് അമ്പലങ്ങളിൽ കയറാൻ പറ്റാത്ത ആളുകളൊക്കെ ആയിട്ട് അങ്ങനെ അൺടച്ചബിലിറ്റി ഒഴിവാക്കി. എല്ലാം സോഷ്യൽ പ്രോജക്ട്സ് ആയിരുന്നു. വി ഹാവ് nothing to do with the serious kind of interventions what he made in religion, what he made within the context of theology, which is completely ignored of by the scholars. That's my concern. Then why won't you change? We would change it actually. We are engaged in a project, he is, I forgot to introduce him. Everyone knows him, We have kind of project, we initiated it. We would explore the possibilities of bringing the theological debate back through the texts which were published some 200 years ago, 300 years ago. And comparative theology is also very important. Most of these interventions of Mannarkkad Tangal were either direct responses to the literature of Christian missionary or the theological project of Christian missionary, which they initiated in early 19th century. With the coming of Tangibar mission in Travancore, and second 1835 Mavelikara Synod. So these two were major. But before that, within these three religions, Judaism, Christianity and Islam, അതിനുള്ളിലുള്ള തിയോളജിക്കൽ ഡിബേറ്റ്സിനെ കുറിച്ച് നമ്മൾ കംപ്ലീറ്റ്ലി അജ്ഞരാണ്. അതിന് കാരണം പലതരത്തിലും പുതിയ വന്ന ചരിത്രകാരന്മാരെല്ലാം അന്വേഷിക്കുന്നത് അവരുടെ സാമൂഹികമായ ഇടപെടലിനെ കുറിച്ചാണ്, വിത്ത് വെരി ലെസ് ഇമ്പോർട്ടൻസ് ഗിവൺ ടു ദി തിയോളജിക്കൽ ഇന്റർവെൻഷൻ ഓർ philosophical interventions of them.
Now the session is going to wind up. നമ്മുടെ ഈ സെഷൻ മൂന്ന് പ്രധാനപ്പെട്ട 3 eminent personalities sitting into this session. One is our yesterday's MESKCON inaugurator, Professor Istvan Persson, Professor, Department of Psychology, Central University of Denmark. And also another person, Mr. Yusuf Ali from Mannarkkad. വളരെ ശ്രദ്ധേയമായ ഒരു ഗ്രന്ഥം അടുത്ത കാലത്ത് എഴുതിയ ഒരു സ്വതന്ത്ര ഗവേഷകനാണ് യൂസഫ് അലി. നമ്മുടെ മ്യൂസിയം നാക്കിന് വേണ്ടി ഈ രീതിയിൽ സെറ്റ് ചെയ്തത് യൂസഫ് അലിയാണ്. അതേപോലെ തന്നെ സാഫി ഇൻസ്റ്റിറ്റ്യൂട്ട് ഓഫ് അഡ്വാൻസ്ഡ് സ്റ്റഡീസ് എന്ന കേരളത്തിൽ ആദ്യമായി ഒരു അഫിലിയേറ്റഡ് സെൽഫ് ഫൈനാൻസിങ് കോളേജ് ഡീംഡ് യൂണിവേഴ്സിറ്റിയിലേക്ക് വൈകാതെ മാറും. നാക്കിൻ്റെ ഇപ്പോൾ ലാസ്റ്റ് നടന്ന അക്രഡിറ്റേഷനിൽ A++ നേടിയ ഒരു സെൽഫ് ഫൈനാൻസിങ് കോളേജിലെ ഇസ്ലാമിക് സ്റ്റഡീസ് വിദ്യാർത്ഥികൾ അല്പം വൈകിയാണെങ്കിലും നമ്മോട് കൂടെ ചേർന്നിട്ടുണ്ട്. അവരാണ് ഇല്യാസ് സാറെ കുറിച്ച് ഇവിടെ മനോഹരമായി ലാസ്റ്റ് ഇൻട്രൊഡ്യൂസ് ചെയ്തത്. ഞാൻ നേരത്തെ പറഞ്ഞിരുന്നു, ഞങ്ങളൊക്കെ ഞാൻ ഫൈസൽ ബാബു ഷിയാബ് സാറൊക്കെ ഡൽഹിയിൽ പഠിക്കുമ്പോൾ ഈ മേഖലയിൽ ഇസ്ലാമിക് സ്റ്റഡീസിൽ ഞങ്ങളെ ഉറപ്പിച്ചു നിർത്തി ഇതിൻ്റെ സാധ്യതകൾ ഞങ്ങൾക്ക് പറഞ്ഞു തന്നു. ഇസ്ലാമിക് ഹിസ്റ്ററിയിൽ ഇന്ന് ഇന്ത്യയിൽ ഉള്ള എക്സ്പേർട്ടുകളിൽ ഒരു അധ്യാപകരാണ് ഇല്യാസ് സാർ. നമ്മുടെയൊക്കെ യൂണിവേഴ്സിറ്റിയിലുള്ള അധ്യാപകരുടെ പ്രൊഫസർഷിപ്പിൻ്റെ അതിൻ്റെ ഗവൺമെൻറ് ഓഫ് കേരള അതിന് എക്സ്പെർട്ടായി നിയോഗിക്കുന്നത് ഇവിടെ നിന്ന് ഒറ്റ ആളേ ഉള്ളൂ, അത് ഇല്യാസ് സാറാണ്. പക്ഷേ സാറിൻ്റെ ഏരിയ ഇസ്ലാമിക് സ്റ്റഡീസ് ഒക്കെ വിട്ട് കുറച്ചു കാലം പോപ്പുലർ കൾച്ചറായിരുന്നു. ഗേൾസ് സ്റ്റഡീസിൽ ഒരു എക്സ്പെർട്ടാണ് സാർ. അപ്പം അങ്ങനെ വളരെ പ്രധാനപ്പെട്ട ഒരു ഏറ്റവും ശ്രദ്ധേയമായ ഒരു അക്കാദമീഷ്യനെയാണ് ഇന്ന് നമുക്ക് ലഭിച്ചത്. ഒരിക്കൽ കൂടി മെസ്കോൺ ഇന്റർനാഷണൽ കോൺഫറൻസിന് വേണ്ടി ഇല്യാസ് സാർക്ക് നന്ദി രേഖപ്പെടുത്തുന്നു. ഈ സെഷൻ ഇവിടെ അവസാനിക്കുന്നു.